Hey superstars, delighted to be back with you all to introduce you to the next of the 12 Thrive Factor archetypes, and we are up to the fourth one in the Thrive Factor alphabet. This is the Liberator Engineer. This is one of my 4 archetypes. I absolutely adore her. I know she can be very intense and overwhelming for a lot of women, whether you have her or not. But the Liberator Engineer is the freedom weaver of the archetypes. She is here to connect with the essence of liberation, which is freedom. And you'll know, being in the business world, a lot of women that talk about wanting freedom. Not every one of them is going to be a Liberator Engineer, but freedom is such a powerful value that so many women in the world today actually have as a value, as a focus, as a core desire. But it's the Liberator Engineers of the world that are going to bring opportunities to life for themselves and for the women that they work with to really truly understand and have both a learned and a lived experience of what freedom actually is. So the engineer part of the Liberator Engineer, the engineer is the analyst who is a big picture woman and can also see all the moving parts of things. And I often use the story of when I spent time in my corporate career. For a long period of that time, I worked in the role of a project manager and then a senior project manager. I loved creating project plans, like nerded out on the things. Microsoft Project, if anyone is in here listening to this at any point in time, put your hand up, let me know, metaphorically, or I can sense your energy, the Liberator Engineer. But that for me was the ultimate in creativity in that constrained business environment. The end result was the freedom of launching a program or guiding a program or a significant piece of the business to life. The engineer part was being able to see the big picture of all of the things that needed to happen, all of the sequential ordered things that needed to flow in and work together for us to get to that end result. So that's like the energy of the Liberator Engineer. A lot of Liberator Engineers do love things like spreadsheets, not all of them, but they can love spreadsheets, they can love systems, they can love software. I know for me, many years ago, when I got into the back end of a WordPress website and saw like all the moving parts about, all the software, what was happening and how I can build things. I love building out sales pages and campaigns and, funnels and all of that kind of stuff. Nerded out on that for a very long time. And I still love doing some of those things with my clients today in the business coaching work that I do. That is 100% my Liberator Engineer at play. But the Liberator Engineer's drive for freedom is so strong in her. As I say, I call her the freedom weaver, but it's so strong that if there is not freedom in her world, the engineer will either end up creating freedom, which may mean breaking things down, or it will feel so overwhelmed that feels trapped and stuck and blocked. So if you look at the image for the card, there's a big expanse of sun in the background, but there is also a wall, right? So it's that feeling of being trapped or stuck or engineered into place, which a Liberator Engineer does to herself and can quite often forget that she's actually been the one who has created that whole dynamic of trapping herself or blocking herself in. So Liberator Engineers, if you know you have this archetype or you resonate with this, know that the parts of you that got yourself into that state are also the parts of you that can get yourself out of it. So you have complete control over your freedom. I always suggest to Liberator Engineers that they are very clear on their own definition of freedom and freedom in the different parts of their life. So if I was to look at that for myself, I look at that as what does freedom mean to me as a businesswoman, as an individual, as a daughter, as a sister, as a friend, when I was formerly married or in a relationship, what does that look like from that perspective? All the different parts, the roles that we play in the world, what does freedom mean to me in each of those? Because it could be different. It's like doing the big Venn diagram, if you like, and finding that commonality in the middle, which is a very Liberator Engineer thing. She is the archetype that creates systems and frameworks and solutions and, likes to map things out, likes to work things out, loves to understand. Where the Inspirer Believer likes to understand her role in the world and what she's doing, the Liberator Engineer just likes to understand things. How do things work? So she's the tinkerer, the builder, that kind of thing. Now, when it comes to creating things, to building things, to bringing things to life, whether that be a sales page or a piece of software or a whole program, or like for me, the Thrive Factor framework, I know that my Liberator Engineer was a huge driving force behind this framework and these 12 archetypes becoming reality. When the Liberator Engineer can get so enmeshed and immersed in things that she can get to the point where she goes from that sense of feeling free and alive and spacious and expanded with what she's creating and can over-engineer everything. It's like the tinkerer aspect of the archetype, where she just goes, I just need to tweak this bit. I just need to see what happens if I do this. I just need, and she just needs to stop, sit on her hands and just let the freedom, that spaciousness that she feels come to life. Now, if she's not created freedom, spaciousness, limitlessness, expansive kind of energy and feelings and experiences in the rest of her world and in her business, she will find that that engineer will get over controlling. It's definitely the control freak aspect of the archetype. It's not the only archetype that can be a bit controlling and like to make sure things just work in certain ways. But I know for me, with my Liberator Engineer, during the warmer months when the winds are better here, I love being on my paddleboard. That is meditation for me. I'm out on the water. There's all the beautiful sky. There's the big expanse of water. Just spent some time today as spring's finally kicking in where I am. Beautiful warm weather, and it was cold in my house, and I had some time. I was doing some things that I could do outside. So I went down to the coast where I can see the horizon, I can see the sky. There's that whole creation of that sense of space around me. It nurtures both my Liberator Engineer and also my Visionary Creator archetype. And with that, my Inspirer Believer gets fired up, and then my Mentor Teacher can distill the wisdom that's coming through me and turn that into all sorts of things. I've just written out a whole lot of a training aspect of a new program that I've got starting later this month. That's the kind of thing that can happen when I'm in that space. So what else can I tell you about the Liberator Engineer? So her whole sense of liberation when it comes to that sense of freedom, anything that's to do with ego and particularly constructed or contrived kind of ego, the Liberator Engineer, it's almost like she has an allergy to that. Like we lean back, we're repelled by anything that's very ego driven. I know for me that's played out in different relationships in my life, particularly in the business world, where there are plenty of business owners out there that are very intensely driven by their ego. They're just expressing ego on such a big scale. And Liberator Engineers have this sort of gift, I'm going to call it a gift. It hasn't felt like it at different times in my life, but a gift for being able to sort of cut right through somebody else's ego or someone else's BS, if you like. I'm not going to swear, but you know what I mean when I say that. I'm sure you do. So it's almost like we just see through it, we break it down. And those women that are more in a state of ego, and there's certainly some archetypes that are more inclined to be very ego driven, but those kinds of women are unsure about Liberator Engineers. Yeah. So to give you an example, when I was in my corporate career, which is some years ago now, there was a couple of women that I worked with at different times, and they were most definitely very ego-driven queen rulers. Now, queen ruler isn't the only archetype that has ego. There are others, and I certainly have no issues with queen rulers. In fact, some of my best friends in the entire world are the most amazing, generous, compassionate, beautiful leaders that are queen rulers. But these two women that I worked with in this sort of past world were very ego-driven. It was very controlling, very I'm in charge, I am the boss, you will do what I say. And I used to find myself in different scenarios working with them. I didn't report to either of them. I had a different boss who didn't have that archetype and didn't have the ego thing, but I worked with them in different projects that I was doing. And I would find often that there was this sort of disconnect, or this sort of almost like I'd annoyed them just by being in their space. I hadn't created these archetypes back then. I didn't know what was going on. As soon as I got to understand the Liberator Engineer and the dynamic of how she really challenges ego in the world, I could see immediately what was going on. Because I used to go to the space of, well, I don't know what I've done. Like, what have I done? Not feeling like I had, necessarily created anything that wasn't warranted. But I just, it's this whole, they just needed to keep me, at safe distance kind of thing. So they felt threatened for different reasons. And I know now it's an ego-driven thing. So, Liberator engineers, if you find yourself grating on people or people just being a bit wary of you and you're not sure why, it's just because there's possibly some ego stuff going on. You can also feel that within yourself, depending on the combination of archetypes you have. You may feel an internal disconnect and a challenge. The mentor teacher is another archetype that can have ego, and I know my mentor teacher does at times have a little bit of like, look at all the stuff I know. Not often, but sometimes. It's a part of the archetype, and my Liberator engineer and the mentor teacher can be a little bit, a bit of friction going on with the two of them when that happens. The Liberator engineer is a deeply intense feeling archetype. She presents in the world like she's got everything together. She often is referred to as a bit cool, a bit calm, definitely collected, sometimes a little bit aloof. And she can be, but it's more her wariness of how things are playing out in the world, and particularly if, as I said, if there's ego around, or if she's not feeling free and she's feeling a bit stuck and a bit blocked, that can come up with a bit of a wall goes up around her. And it's just her, safety mechanism and self-protection. But at the same time of that little sort of cool and calm, I got all my stuff together and I'm, a bit aloof, she's got this deep, intense ability to feel, to sense where people are at. Very intuitive archetype. And with that, she brings a great sense of, as I said, freedom to others, because they can really see where she suggests something to them or talks to them about something or shares something that she's done or she's learned. Depending on her other archetypes, as different things can come to play there. But it creates a sense of that freedom and that expansion, that spaciousness for others, and people love it. I use the word effortless a lot. The whole byline of the Thrive Factor book is, the Thrive Factor, unlock your effortless success zone. The whole sense of being in your effortless success zone is not effort free, it's effortless. But it's where things are easier. There's that sense of spaciousness and freedom. Definitely the influence of my Liberator engineer. Think what else I can tell you about her. So that intensity that's building up, if she is not taking care of that, she can either get to a space where she feels like, it's all too much, and she will either go into an implosion where she can get sick. Often there can be energetic kind of illnesses and things that can go on for a Liberator engineer, similar to the Inspired Believer. So if you've got those two archetypes, that's how they can work together and amplify those different kinds of illness states or states of feeling unwell and out of place. Or the Liberator engineer can explode. And what that looks like is a need to just express herself, express her frustration. She'll often use the word frustration or frustrated if she's feeling that kind of rigid, stuck, blocked kind of energy going on. So this is another reason why taking care of your freedom and doing things that make you feel free, no matter whatever that looks like in your life and in your work, is incredibly important for every Liberator engineer. Because when you can do more of that, then you can be the freedom weaver, truly, and you can create more of that beautiful, free-flowing energy of freedom, rather than the stop and start or the all freedom and so free that you've got no structure and no support, which doesn't necessarily work for you. Or so rigid and so structured and so analytical that you also feel trapped then and stuck and blocked. Let me see what else. So the only other thing I want to tell you about the Liberator engineer is that I've mentioned as we've gone along that all of the archetypes are linked to a god or to a goddess, in keeping with the traditional archetypal psychology. And for the Liberator engineer, there's a couple of goddesses that really come to light. The first one that's the dominant goddess that I linked the energy of the Liberator engineer to is the goddess Kali. So she's the Eastern goddess of death and destruction. But it's not death of people or things, it's death of ego. So she can look quite scary. If you look at images of her, some of you may know the energy of Kali. I just find her such a breath of fresh air. She just clears a slate and everything moves on. And then the other goddess that has a bit of an influence is the goddess Pele, who is the Hawaiian goddess, so the volcano goddess. And again, it's about that energy of just clearing the slate and starting again, but clearing in often quite a destructive kind of a way of we just need to, to just smooth it all out, let all that lava flow, destroy different things and bring back to the center of that original kind of energy and wholeness. So Liberator engineer, if you have this archetype, I'd love you to share that you do. Let me know if you'd have any questions about the archetype. Also, please ask. But enjoy her. She's a big powerhouse kind of woman. Got beautiful things to add to the world, as all of the 12 archetypes do. This one's also got a bit of a rebellious streak. So the vibe of the rebel woman mastermind that I run is definitely inspired by my energy of the Liberator engineer. Doesn't mean that she's the only archetype that's got a rebellious streak. But she is, again, if she feels ever like she is being told what to do, she wants to often break out of that patterning whenever she can. So wherever you are in the world, stay safe, have a beautiful rest of your day, and let me know if you have any questions about the Libretto Engineer. Bye, everyone.